This is kind of a rarity, especially with Chris Jericho involved. But I thought that segment with Hook and Taz last night was a miss for me. And there's a couple of reasons why. I'm watching that segment and I'm like, man, I really wish that this story was told a lot longer than it has. It just feels like they rushed Jericho and Hook getting together and they rushed the breakup of them and then they're rushing this match. Like it just feels like they're taking it on a sprint instead of a marathon. And I was thinking as I'm watching it, it would have been kind of cool if we saw Jericho and Hook together for a while having success. You know, maybe even winning a tag team title and having like a lengthy run and then losing it and then seeing it break apart. And then Jericho saying to Hook, like, man, I carried you. I'm the veteran. I'm the one with the experience. You're the young boy. You know, you need to listen to me. You never would have had the success you had if it wasn't for me. Now it feels to me it's been rushed and it's falling kind of flat. And that kind of describes the segment last night. Like, I felt like they were building towards something and we never really quite got there. What do you think about what I'm saying? Is there any truth to what I'm saying, Tommy?
Yes, time-wise, right? We've had not a lot of time to get emotionally invested in this team that was rocky from its foundation to the start, because even if once they got together, it was like, hey, I understand that, and Hook said, you're Chris Jericho. Like, I understand what you're going to do because I've watched wrestling my whole life. Having Chris Jericho saddle up to Hook is one thing. Having Chris Jericho and Hook having success was like, maybe as the younger wrestler, I was wrong. I even didn't listen to my father because my father said, hey, maybe you don't want to trust him that much. That's why there's no emotional investment for you that this team. Like, I think the fans kind of saw this happening with Jericho from the start. And like you said, length. They haven't been together all that long. The segment had a good build at first, and then once the physicality happened, I kind of had like, ooh, wait a minute. Like, I thought, like, realistic, right? I'll never forget that I told you my father lost his vision, plus he had Parkinson's disease. He was walking really, really slow. And a person at a table, because my mom was, she looked, a lot younger than my father. And I'm walking by and somebody says something, and it's just like that woman with they called my father the R word, right? And rage. And I just put my father in the seat and I went right over to them. And I was ready to beat the hell out of them. And then the waiter comes over and he's like, you're Tommy Dreamer. Now I can't beat them up. Well, I could, but because it kind of took it out of the zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I went from like rage to like and I was like, do you understand that my father had 5 masters? You don't know this story. How dare you? And the guy was like, I'm so sorry, so sorry. But my first reaction was and this was a stranger, to just beat the hell out of the person. This is somebody that then pushed my father. And I would have loved it was kind of like a slow boil. That's when Hook, just like in wrestling, he has to, I get that you're the calm, cool person, but you have to sometimes snap. And if somebody pushes my father down, you have to snap, whether it's just a suplex, whether, and they played it off like even Taz, when he went to the desk, acted like he didn't mean to do that. Well, it was a deliberate push. And also, if you have this bad knee, whatever, Hook never went and checked on his dad.
Yeah.
And how, like, that was the disconnects for me, where I think that place would have come unglued if we go instead of saying, get out of my ring, you throw him out of the ring. That's what a badass does. Hey, you just put your hands on, I T-bone suplex you out of the ring. This relationship's broken up. And then I also didn't like that Taz, I liked how they tried covering up. I would have had Taz at least leave for at least a segment. I went to the back. I got checked out. I'm all right. Like, hey, I'm a former pro wrestler. This happens. I got a bum knee. That's it. You don't need to be there right there. Just kind of sell it. And you also would have gotten a hero's welcome. Think of all the times when a football player gets hit, goes down, they sit out. At first, everyone's all worried, and then they come back. If it's a worse injury, you do the thumbs up. Yay, he's not going to die today. But as opposed to, this, when you come back, it would get kind of a hero's welcome. You do it in the back too, to his son. Thanks for sticking up for me. Because there is a time when it happens to everybody. We all have experienced it. If you're a person in your 40s to 50s, where we start seeing our parents and we have to start taking care of our parents. We start seeing where our parents are getting older. And it's one of the hardest things. You and I have discussed this.
Yeah.
And if the fans wanted to see Taz of old, they wanted to see Taz take off those sunglasses and choke Jericho out. Cool, but it's not his time. And he does have health issues, so he can't do anything about it. But then when my son does it, it's like there's also a time where, as a parent, you're super proud of your son. And when your son does something in any athletic sport, it's also like, man, that's how I used to do it. So it was a little flat for me as well. And I also, just because I would have loved to see this thing go so much longer, because everything that Jericho says and does is gold. And all the things that he did say about helping people, he has helped elevate them. And then the other part about that is telling Hook he's not ready. The fans may think he is, but he's not. And he has to get more seasoned. He is and will be, but not right yet. This is a business of seasoning. And I would have loved to seen this stretched out at least 2 months, but sometimes whatever behind the scenes happens, and so that's why stuff can't get progressed as long as it can.
Yeah, I like I said, I think this could have been a much longer program where we see them have major success and then the decline and then the foundation cracking and breaking, leading to the segment that we got last night. And I agree with you 100% because it was exactly what I was thinking, Tommy. First and foremost, all right, who is the one that brokered that whole segment? It was Taz. He was the one that wanted to get Jericho and Hook together. Right away, I dislike Hook. You're disrespecting your dad. Your dad put that together, and then you come in, you're eating a bag of potato chips, and you're leaning against the top turnbuckle. To me, all right, you have that reaction to Jericho, but I'm looking at it, it's like you're disrespecting your father. Your father's standing in the ring. He's the one that put this together, and you're leaning against the turnbuckle eating a bag of potato chips. I get that's his character, but when you have Taz and you're using Taz in that scenario, you want to see a little bit more of a different side of Hook because you are using your dad. And if you're using Taz, and a lot of times we talked about the lack of using Taz, now you're using him, so it should be a big deal. It should be a much bigger deal to Hook. And I agree with you. You talked about that story, and thank you for sharing that story about your dad. I was thinking about my dad, too. My dad, believe it or not, you wouldn't know it by looking at me. My dad was a badass. My dad was a leather jacket, motorcycle driving. That was my dad. And he, because of cancer and because of heart problems, he was like a shell of himself the last 10 years of his life. So Taz is having health issues. I was explaining this to producer Paul before the show. If I saw anybody get physical with my dad, I'm not just saying, get out of my ring, get out of my ring. You went over the line. I'm swinging. I don't give a shit who you are, what size you are. You get physical with my dad and you push my dad down like Jericho did to Taz. I don't give a shit. Fists are flying right after that. And the fact that like Hook made it about himself, and as you said, he didn't even check on his dad who was laying on the ground. Like, what are you thinking? Like, to me, that was such a big swing and a miss last night. And it doesn't get me at all invested in the match that they're having on Dynasty on Sunday. I'm sorry. And I hate saying that because I love Jericho. And I thought Jericho was really good in that segment. But, man, to me, the way they used Hook and Hook's attitude, and even the attitude after his father got knocked down, man, that was a major swing and a miss last night.
There was so many key moments, like when Jericho first turned and like put his like thumbs up, finger up to Taz, like hold up, and like the fans like, oh, they started simmering. Jericho tried reeling them in many times. When he did the straight up palm to your face, they were like, oh man, this is either going to be Taz comes back or this is going to be Jericho comes back. You could listening to the crowd. Also, when you have Taz, he needs to be treated special. Same with Tony Schiavone. When you have two guys who are legends in this industry, but also like, you know, Taz to keep that mystique of Taz. And again, I understand it's not his time anymore, but he can, like, it could have been better. Or use a different person and as your interviewer. When these people interview you or do something, it needs to be special. That had all the ingredients to be special, but then the execution and the follow-through didn't work as well. Because just like you said, if somebody, like Dave, if me and you were hanging out in your house and I push your father down, I know you'd be like, Tommy, what the hell? And you'd get involved in it.
Yeah.
You know? So it's just one of those things that if they had more time and able to tell a longer story, but sometimes in the world of pro wrestling, it happens so fast. I feel the same exact way. I don't know how the nation felt. I just thought they could have had something bigger and then not so much. Or even like if Taz takes off the glasses and there's just like, get your finger out of my face. And then Hook steps in and then like there's something accidental or subject to questionable deniability. But this was just straight up push. And then, you know, Taz like, I'm still friends with Jericho. He was hot headed.
What the fuck was that? I agree. You know what? You actually said something that made me start thinking. Maybe it would have been better if it was, say, a Tony Schiavone in that position. Like Tony Schiavone saying, hey, I see Hook as an up-and-comer. Jericho, we've known each other for a long time. Let's get you two in the ring. Let's have an interview. Because then if Jericho goes and pushes Schiavone, then you know what? Hook's going to be upset, but not at the degree where he's going to be checking on Tony Schiavone. So maybe it would have worked better if it was like an outsider doing that intervention as opposed to Taz. And then you could have built towards Taz. Because even like Taz getting a little bit upset saying, hey, Chris, calm down. What Jericho was saying wasn't, to me, that bad for Taz to go from a 0 to 100 in that moment either. Like, it would have been better if that segment went a little bit longer and you see Jericho getting a little bit more frustrated where he starts name calling Hook and saying, you know what, Hook, to be quite honest with you, lately you've been shit in the ring. That's going to be enough for Taz to come in and be like, whoa, man, now you're stepping over the line. But even the stuff that was coming out of Jericho's mouth, I didn't think was enough for like Taz to get involved like the way he did. Rushed. It was rushed. That's the only thing I could say. It was rushed.
Yes, but the other part of it is, like I said earlier, emotional investment. There's two ways to turn somebody or break up a tag team. Over time, where you so know somebody is going to turn, but you just don't know when. Like, you're like, oh, this is it. Oh, no, this isn't it. Or shock. Complete and utter shock. Shawn Michaels, Marty Jannetty were having their beef. They break up. Shock. Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan. Time. Like, oh, look at Savage. Oh, even Elizabeth's getting in there. And then it finally happens when you're like, man, I knew these guys couldn't get along, but finally they fought. So we don't have that time with these two, and their relationship was rocky from the start. I don't know why. Like I said, it's splitting up because Jericho could get anything and everything over. And I do think that team, you're coming to name a new AEW Tag Team Champions coming up. They could have kept on building their togetherness as a team and then challenge the winners of the new tournament. And then it's literally just give us a little bit. And yes, we're not going to win the tag titles, but we came so close. But no, hey kid, if you keep listening to me, and you just keep on having these little moments, and then it's like, oh man, now it's going to happen. Now it's going to happen. And it just still doesn't happen. And also because Hook is a second generation wrestler, he's going to have a little bit more tolerance, a little bit more respect for the veteran. So that was it.
Yeah, no, I could tell, Tommy, and I agree with you. You're looking at it, from 40,000 feet, and you're like, that could have been magic. Like that could have been a really cool story. Because listen, Jericho's a legend. He gets everything over. He's amazing on the microphone. If they were given more time, Jericho would have been able to tell one hell of a story. The fans are starting to turn on Jericho a little bit. You could have played on that. The fans love Hook. You could have played on that. And then you could have built towards a moment where Taz got knocked down. That's a major moment. And like you said, the next segment, he's back on commentary. It's like, all right, let's move on. Let's hurry up and let's move on. Where that could have been a moment and a story, Tommy, where people were talking about it for years. There was the potential there to have that be one of the major stories that AEW has ever told. And it's like, let's hurry up and rush through it so we can have a match on the pay-per-view on Sunday.
Again, time and time vested into something. TV time is prime real estate. Getting people to be emotionally invested into two characters. We're already invested in them as singles. Now let's get them over together as a tag. We go so far. It didn't work out. And then what? And then what is the biggest thing. And if they had success or they reach to the top, Jericho's going to turn, and then this deal gets brokered to kind of put them back together. Hey, you guys had success, blah, 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 blah. And then all that stuff happens.